his parents. Don't sell me.
Shut up! Do you think this house can afford to support you anymore?
You are just a burden. Look at the fine lady in her white dress.
Why are you crying? You should be happy.
Look at this disgrace.
He belongs in the dirt, not with a bride.
No one in that poor village could clearly remember where the girl had truly come from. People only whispered that. On a gray, rain-soaked morning many years ago, when mist still covered the narrow paths and the thatched roofs were drenched in cold rain, someone saw a newborn baby left at the gate of a poor couple's house. The baby had no name, no documents, not even a small piece of paper to reveal her origin. There was no sign that anyone had ever held her or waited for her to be born into this world. There was only a worn-out cloth, damp and cold from the rain, and a weak, broken cry, as if that tiny life itself wasn't even sure whether it deserved to exist. The woman of the house opened the door, looked down, hesitated for a moment, then picked her up. They adopted the girl, but not out of kindness, not because they wanted to save a life, simply because they needed someone to work. She grew up, but never had a real childhood. No dolls to hold, no innocent games with other children, no laughter echoing in the yard, and certainly no warm embraces, the kind every child deserves. Her mornings began before the sun even rose. Cold wind slipped through the cracks, cutting into her skin. She had to wake while everyone else was still asleep. Her small, bare feet stepped onto the damp, freezing ground. Her trembling hands carried a bucket of water almost as heavy as her own body. Water sloshed over the edge, soaking her thin clothes. Do it again. How is it still dirty like this? Her adoptive mother's voice was always sharp like a blade. Without even looking, one could feel the irritation, the disgust in every word. She didn't dare argue, didn't dare lift her head, didn't dare show even the slightest resistance. She just bent down and cleaned again. The second time, then the third, then the fourth, until her small hands turned red, burning, shaking from cold and exhaustion. Her adoptive father spoke less. He didn't shout much, but every time he did, it cut deeper than any scream. Eat less. You're not our real child. Don't think being fed gives you rights. Those words, day after day, year after year, repeated like a curse, like something always hanging above her head, reminding her she didn't belong here. And maybe she didn't belong anywhere in this world. She didn't have a name, at least not a real one. At home, they called her the girl. Outside, people called her the same. No one cared to ask. No one cared to give her a name, as if she wasn't a human being with feelings, just something temporarily existing in that old house. A shadow, a servant, a burden. Her life was an endless loop, carrying water from a distant well, washing clothes until her hands cracked and wrinkled, cooking for the whole family, but always eating last and the least, cleaning, scrubbing task after task, then working in the fields under a scorching sun that burned her skin raw. Sweat mixed with dust running down her face, but she was never allowed to complain. Her hands became rough and calloused long before she ever learned how to hold a pen. Her small shoulders were always bent, not out of humility, but because she had grown used to carrying everything. So used to it, that if one day she had nothing to carry, she would probably feel empty. There were nights when everyone else had fallen asleep. The house sank into silence. She would sit alone in the corner of the kitchen. The faint glow of firelight flickered across her thin face, her eyes deep, not from lack of sleep, but from lack of hope. She stared into the flame, as if searching for an answer. What did I do wrong to be abandoned? The question echoed in her mind, again and again, but no one answered. No voice, no explanation, only silence. And eventually, she stopped asking. Not because she found the answer, but because she understood there would never be one. In the village, children called her the unwanted one. They laughed. They pointed. They threw cruel words casually, as if it were all just a game. Their laughter echoed behind her. Their scornful eyes followed every step she took. She heard it all, understood it all, but didn't react. Not because it didn't hurt, but because she had gotten used to it. Used to being overlooked, used to being hurt, used to having no one stand up for her. But what hurt the most wasn't the insults, wasn't the beatings, wasn't even the hardship. It was the silence of the adults in the village. They saw everything. They knew everything. They saw her working from dawn to night, saw her being yelled at, saw her treated like a servant. But no one spoke up. No one intervened. No one said it was wrong, because in their minds, an orphan who was taken in should be grateful, even if the price of that gratitude was her entire childhood, her entire life. When she turned 18, no one remembered, no one celebrated, no small cake, no kind words. That day passed like any other, quiet, invisible, leaving no trace. Until that evening. Her adoptive father called her inside, his voice lowered, not the warmth of concern, but the cold tone of calculation, clear, purposeful. It's time you repay what we've spent raising you. She stood still, her heart beat faster, not entirely from fear, but from a vague feeling rising inside her. Something wasn't right. Something very bad was coming. Tomorrow, someone will come. He continued, a man. You will go with him. She didn't understand at first, or maybe she didn't want to. But then, the look in her adoptive mother's eyes, cold, indifferent, without hesitation, without guilt, said everything. No more words were needed. She had no right to ask, no right to refuse, and certainly no right to choose. Her life, from the very beginning until now, had never belonged to her. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the small window where cold wind slipped through, looking out at the pitch-black sky. No moon, no stars, just endless darkness, like the future ahead of her, an empty void with no way out. And strangely, she didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't rebel, didn't try to run. She just sat there, silent. A heavy silence, not of surrender, but of someone who had long been used to having their fate decided. And somewhere, deep inside her heart hardened by pain, there was still something left, a tiny spark, a fragile hope, that maybe, just once, life would be gentle with her, would give her another path, would not take everything away again. But she didn't know. What was waiting ahead of her was not just an arranged marriage, but a secret far greater than anything she had ever imagined. A secret that could shatter her past and rewrite her entire destiny forever. The next morning, the sky was still a heavy shade of gray, as if something was pressing down on it. Not the ordinary gray of a rainy day, but the kind that made it hard to breathe, as if even the sky knew today would not be peaceful. There were no birds singing, no sunlight slipping through the old roof, only a thick, suffocating silence covering the entire worn-down house. The girl woke up earlier than usual, but not because of work, not because someone called her. It was because she couldn't sleep. All night long she barely closed her eyes. Every time she did, her adoptive father's voice echoed again, clear, cold, like a sentence already decided. Tomorrow, someone will come. The words repeated, not fast, not slow, but heavy enough to weigh down her heart. She stepped outside. Her bare feet touched the damp ground, cold, A cold that didn't just touch her skin, but seemed to seep deep inside her. She stood there for a moment, looking around. Everything was the same as always. The old well with its worn stone edges, the frayed broom leaning against the wall, the cracks running across the mud walls, cracks she had memorized after years of staring at them. Nothing had changed. Nothing was new. Only one thing was different. Today might be the last time she would ever see any of it. But strangely, she felt no regret, no urge to hold on, no desire to stay. Because deep down she knew this place had never been her home, not once. By noon, the air grew heavier. Time moved strangely slow, as if every second stretched endlessly. Then a strange sound echoed from afar, the sound of wheels. Not the smooth sound of a cart, but the dragging, creaking sound of old wheels grinding against a rough dirt road. Creak, creak, creak. Each sound scraping against the heart. She froze, didn't move, didn't breathe deeply. Just stood there, her heart pounding, each beat heavy, loud, as if her body itself was warning her something was wrong. The man appeared at the gate. No car, no neat clothes, no sign of dignity or decency. Only an old wheelchair, its worn wheels creaking, and a thin, fragile body. His clothes were torn, worn down by time. His hair was messy, his skin sunburned, his face exhausted, and his eyes almost lifeless. A beggar. She stood there stunned, not because she was surprised, but because this was far worse than anything she had imagined the night before. Much worse. Her adoptive mother stepped out, her face expressionless. No joy, no sadness, no hesitation. "You're here." Her voice was calm, cold, as if speaking about something ordinary. The man nodded slightly, said nothing. No explanation, no questions. Just that. This is the girl. Her adoptive father stepped out and pulled her forward. The way he grabbed her hand was not guiding. It was like presenting an object, a product, not a human being. She stood there, her feet rooted to the ground, no resistance, not a word. But inside, something was breaking, not all at once, but piece by piece, slowly, silently, without a sound. "The price is already agreed," her adoptive father said. Flat. No backing outright. The man in the wheelchair looked up. His eyes rested on her face. A moment longer than usual. Not rushed, not avoiding. It wasn't the gaze of someone buying something, not calculating, not judging, but something else. Something she couldn't understand, couldn't name, but she had no time to think, because right after, a bag of money was placed on the table. A dry sound, heavy, clear, final. No more words, no negotiation, no confirmation. It was done. No documents, no ceremony. No one asked her, just a nod. And her life was sold. "Get ready. The ceremony is this afternoon," her adoptive mother said lightly, as if it were just another chore. That afternoon, the entire village gathered not to celebrate, not to bless, but to watch something strange, to watch a spectacle. She was dressed in a wedding gown, but it wasn't new. It was old, wrinkled, ill-fitting, too long, dragging across the ground, too tight at the shoulders, too loose at the waist, as if it had been taken from some long-forgotten wedding. No one did her makeup, no necklace, no earrings, nothing. Only her red, sleepless eyes. And a face, drained of life. Across from her, the man still sat in that old wheelchair, still the same worn clothes, still the same poor appearance. No one in the crowd bothered to hide their laughter. Look at that, the bride and a beggar. What a perfect match. At least someone agreed to take her. Laughter erupted everywhere. Sharp, cruel, relentless. No one thought it was wrong. No one tried to stop. She lowered her head, not out of shame, but because she knew if she looked up, if she faced all those eyes, she wouldn't be able to stand anymore. The officiant muttered a few words, quick, careless, emotionless. No one listened. No one cared. They were all waiting for the final moment. Exchange rings. Her hand trembled. Clearly, uncontrollably. The cold ring touched her skin, then slid onto her finger. Slow, heavy. In that moment she felt something invisible tighten around her. Not a ring, but a chain, a shackle. Invisible, but inescapable. Her last bit of freedom disappeared. But just as she was about to pull her hand back, another hand held hers, gentle, not rough, but firm. She flinched, looked up, for the first time, meeting his eyes. And in that brief moment, she noticed something strange. His eyes were not empty, not lifeless, not tired like his appearance suggested. Instead, they were sharp, awake, observant, as if he could see through everything. Not like a beggar, not like someone weak, certainly not like someone helpless. "Don't be afraid," he said, his voice low, calm, steady, completely out of place in the surrounding chaos. She froze. Her heart pounded harder. A chill ran down her spine. Not fear, but confusion. Before she could understand anything, the laughter erupted again. Loud, mocking, chaotic. The ceremony ended. No applause, no blessings, only curious stares and mocking smiles. She became a wife, not by love, not by choice, but through a transaction. As the wheelchair began to roll away from the village, she didn't look back, not once. Not because she was strong, but because she knew behind her there was nothing worth looking back at. No one waiting for her. No place called home. But she didn't know. The man sitting beside her, the one the entire village had just laughed at, was the only person who could change her entire destiny. And this humiliating wedding was only the beginning of a truth that would make everyone who laughed today fall silent, lower their heads, and live in regret for the rest of their lives. The wheelchair rolled slowly along the endless dirt road. The road seemed to have no end, just a rough stretch of earth marked with dried mud and old wheel tracks stretching endlessly forward as if it were swallowing the last fragments of her hope. No one spoke. Not a single word. Between two people forced together by a cold, unwanted marriage, only silence lingered like a shadow, thick, heavy, as if the moment either of them spoke, everything would shatter. Only the dry sound of wheels scraping against the ground remained, repeating, steady, heavy, like the invisible ticking of fate. Creak, creak, creak. Each turn of the wheel reminded her that her life had shifted into a direction she never chose. The girl sat behind him, her back straight but rigid. Her hands clenched tightly together until her knuckles turned pale fingers interlocked, as if that was the only way to stop herself from trembling. Her eyes stared straight ahead. But in truth, she saw nothing. The road blurred, the scenery blurred. Everything passed by without truly touching her, because her mind was completely empty. She didn't know where she was being taken, didn't know where they were going, didn't know what her life would become from this moment on. Would it be the same endless suffering as before, or something even worse? She didn't know. And that uncertainty was the most terrifying thing of all. The house appeared as dusk began to fall. The last weak light of the day cast a dull gray over everything, making the scene even more desolate. It was a small house, old, worn down, standing unsteadily as if one more heavy, rainy season would make it collapse entirely. The walls were stained and cracked, the roof patched together with mismatched pieces clearly leaking whenever it rained. The wooden door leaned crookedly, its hinges so weak it seemed one strong gust of wind could knock it down. She stared at the house for a long moment. A cold feeling spread through her chest, not from shock, but from disappointment. This place was no different from the one she had just left. Even worse, at least her old house carried a familiar kind of cruelty she had lived with for years. But this place was both poor and unfamiliar, like another pit opening to swallow her whole. "This is home." The man spoke. His voice was calm in a way that didn't make sense. No embarrassment, no insecurity, no shame at bringing a new wife to such a miserable place. He said it so naturally that it made her pause, as if he had never once thought his situation was something to be ashamed of, as if in his eyes this place was still a home, still somewhere to return to, still somewhere to live. That calmness unsettled her. Anyone else might have lowered their head, avoided her gaze, struggled to speak. But not him. He simply said it lightly, plainly, as if stating an obvious fact. "This is home." Just 4 words. But somehow, they carried a strange sense of certainty. She stepped inside. Immediately, the smell of dampness hit her. The space was cramped, dim, barely furnished. An old table, a few simple items, a small kitchen corner. Everything was poor, quiet, lacking any sign of comfort. And yet, strangely, despite its poverty, the house wasn't messy, not dirty, not chaotic like she had imagined a beggar's home would be. Everything was in its place, minimal but orderly, simple but neat. That only made her more confused. "You can rest there." He pointed toward the old bed in the corner. "You don't need to do anything tonight." His voice was natural, not commanding, not cold, not patronizing, just a simple statement. She froze. "Don't need to do anything." Those words held her in place for several seconds, because to her they felt unreal, unfamiliar to the point of disbelief. In all her years, no one had ever told her she could rest. No one had ever said she didn't need to do anything. Her entire life had been about work, about rushing, about waking early, about bowing her head, about serving, about staying silent. So hearing those simple words, she didn't know how to react. Not happiness, not gratitude, just confusion, as if someone had spoken a language that didn't belong to her world. "And you?" she asked instinctively. The question slipped out before she could think. Perhaps because she wasn't used to someone giving something up for her. Perhaps because she immediately imagined if she took the only bed. Where would he stay? "I'm fine," he replied briefly. Just 2 words, no explanation, no discomfort, no forced endurance. His voice remained the same, low, steady, strangely calm. That night, she lay on the hard bed. The thin mattress barely softened the wooden planks beneath. Her back ached, her shoulders stiff, but she couldn't sleep. Her eyes stayed open, staring at the dark ceiling. Old water stains spread across it. The night wind slipped through the cracks, carrying a damp chill. The house was eerily quiet, so quiet she could hear her own breathing. But what kept her awake wasn't the house, not the bed, not the smell, not even her fear of the future. It was him. He was too different, different in a way she couldn't stop thinking about. Too quiet. But not the quiet of someone defeated, rather the quiet of someone in control. Too calm, too composed, too precise. And most importantly, he was nothing like a beggar. His appearance might be, his clothes might be, the wheelchair might be. But the way he spoke, the way he looked, the way he sat in silence, None of it matched. She didn't know what to call that feeling, only that it unsettled her. The next morning, she woke early as she always had, before sunrise. The air was still cold and damp. Her body had long been trained to rise before dawn, no matter where she was, no matter how tired. She sat up, looked around, then stepped outside. But as soon as she reached the door, she stopped. Her feet froze. Her eyes widened slightly. Water had already been fetched. Buckets were neatly placed in the yard, filled. Firewood stacked carefully in small, dry bundles. The stove already lit. A thin trail of smoke rose into the air. Everything was prepared, as if someone had woken up earlier and silently done all the work she was supposed to do. She stood there, silent, unable to understand. A strange feeling rose inside her. Not relief, more like disbelief. Because for the first time in her life, she woke up without having to rush into work. "You're up early," his voice came from behind. She turned. It was him, still in the wheelchair, still calm. Nothing unusual. And yet, that made it even harder to understand. "You did all this?" She asked, suspicion clear in her voice, not out of rudeness, but because she truly couldn't imagine it. "Yes," he answered simply, no extra words, as if it were nothing unusual. "But you—" Her eyes dropped unconsciously to the wheelchair. The sentence trailed off. She didn't finish it, but her meaning was clear. How could someone like him do all this? He understood. Perhaps he was used to such looks. A faint smile touched his lips, so slight she almost thought she imagined it. No anger, no bitterness, just calm. "Not everything is as you think," he said, his voice still low, but this time it sent a chill down her spine. That sentence was the first time she truly felt something was off. No more precisely. Something wasn't simple. This man was not as simple as he appeared, and perhaps the life she had just entered wasn't simple either. In the days that followed, she began to observe him, quietly, carefully, watching every small movement, listening to every word, noting every strange detail. It was instinct, because the closer she was to him, the more she felt there was too much she couldn't understand. He spoke very little, sometimes only a few sentences a day. But strangely, whenever he did speak, he was always precise, not vague, not excessive, but accurate to an unsettling degree. One time she sat in front of a jar of rice trying to calculate how many meals were left. Before she could say anything, he spoke from behind her. "Enough for 3 more days." She spun around. "You can see." The question came out immediately, because he answered too quickly, as if he had seen the exact amount, but he didn't reply. He stayed silent, then turned away as if he hadn't heard. That silence only deepened her suspicion. Another time, it was a bright afternoon, clear sky, no clouds, nothing suggested rain. Yet suddenly he said, "It will rain this afternoon." She frowned, looked up instinctively, didn't believe it. But by evening, rain poured down, not light rain, a heavy downpour, relentless, almost to the exact hour. She stood under the roof watching the rain, her heart turning cold, not because of the storm, but because of his words. A chill ran down her spine, not fear of a dangerous man, but the fear of something she couldn't understand. A beggar, a man in a wheelchair, a man mocked by the entire village. How could he know so much? Know the rice, know the weather, know things before she even acted. Who was he? One evening, she was cooking. The fire grew too strong because she was distracted. Suddenly he spoke. "Don't let the fire get too big." She turned immediately. "You can't see. How do you know?" This time she asked directly. He was silent. A second, 2 seconds, as if considering. Then he answered, "I hear." "Hear?" She repeated, confused. "The sound of the fire, the smell of the food, the rhythm of your breathing when you rush." She froze. The answer was strange, but logical. So logical she couldn't argue. "If you pay attention," he continued calmly, "everything tells you." That sentence stirred something inside her. It didn't sound like something an ordinary person would say. Certainly not a beggar. It sounded like someone who observed, analyzed, understood. Someone sharp, deep, unpredictable. That night, she couldn't sleep again, not from hunger, not from cold, but from the questions filling her mind. She sat up quietly, turned to look at him. He was sitting in the dark, not sleeping, not moving. Straight posture, silent, as if lost in deep thought. But his eyes were not empty, not lifeless. They were thinking, cold, sharp. Not the eyes of someone defeated, but of someone used to control, simply hidden, carefully. Her heart pounded. A thought flashed. Who? Is he really a beggar? Or just pretending? But she didn't dare ask, not because she didn't want to know, but because deep inside she sensed, the moment she asked, her life would change again. In a way far greater, far deeper, far more dangerous, because deep down, she began to understand something. The man the whole village called a beggar might not be who they thought, might not be who anyone believed, and if that was true, then this marriage was not a simple mistake, not an accident, but the beginning of a secret so powerful that once revealed, everything would change. Her past, her present, her future, all of it. Because the man sitting quietly in the darkness had never truly been ordinary. That morning, the silence felt unnatural. No wind brushed past the roof, no birds chirped in the familiar trees, no small, ordinary sounds of village life, only a heavy stillness thick like fog blanketing the small house from inside out. It wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, yet it made it hard to breathe, as if something was quietly waiting to happen. The girl stood in the yard holding a broom, slowly sweeping thin layers of dust. Her movements were steady, rhythmic, almost unconscious. The old bamboo broom brushed against the dry ground, making soft, repetitive sounds. But her mind was far away. For days now she hadn't been able to stop thinking about him. The way he spoke few words, but each one carefully measured. The way he seemed to know things he shouldn't. The calmness in him, not the calm of resignation, but of someone always in control. And above all, that strange feeling he gave her. He was unlike anyone she had ever met. Not like the villagers, not like the poor, struggling people she saw every day, and certainly not like a beggar abandoned by life. The more she thought, the more uneasy she became. The more she tried to understand, the less she did. Then suddenly, a strange sound cut through her thoughts. It came from a distance, but it was clear. Not the familiar clatter of carts on dirt roads, not footsteps, not sandals, but an engine. Low, powerful, steady, a sound completely foreign to this quiet, impoverished place. She froze. The broom stopped mid-motion. Her whole body tensed instinctively. Her heart began to pound as if sensing something ominous. That sound did not belong here, did not belong on the muddy road leading into the village, did not belong in the life she knew. It was too strange, too distant, too different. Slowly, she turned her head toward the road. The pale morning sunlight reflected off a thin layer of dust rising into the air. And then she saw it. A black car, long, glossy, so clean it reflected light like a mirror. It didn't just stand out. It felt completely out of place among the cracked mud walls, crooked fences, and fragile houses, like something from another world. But that wasn't all. Behind it, another car, then a third. 3 luxury black cars drove slowly down the narrow dirt road, deliberate and precise, before stopping right in front of the small house. She stood frozen. Her fingers loosened, the broom fell to the ground. A sharp clack echoed in the silence so loud it startled even her. But she didn't bend down to pick it up. She couldn't. Her whole body felt paralyzed. The car doors opened, one by one. Men stepped out, all dressed in perfectly tailored black suits, their shoes polished so clean not a single grain of dust clung to them. Cold expressions, sharp eyes. Their movements were quick, precise, professional enough to make it obvious they didn't belong here. They weren't villagers, not ordinary visitors, not anyone she had ever seen. None of them looked around curiously. None reacted to the broken house. They walked straight forward, no hesitation, no delay, no distractions, as if they knew exactly where they were going, and exactly who they were looking for. She stepped back instinctively. One step, then another. Her chest tightened. Her heart pounded violently. Thoughts raced through her mind. Who are they? Why are they here? Did they come to the wrong place? Or are they here for him? Do you see that? She turned quickly toward the man inside. Her voice was hoarse, thin, trembling, as if she barely recognized it herself. He was still there, in his old wheelchair. Calm as always. No surprise, no urgency, no reaction to the luxury cars outside. "Yes," he replied. Just one word. Short, calm, terrifyingly calm, because there was no surprise in his voice, no question, no natural reaction, as if he already knew. As if he had been waiting for this moment. She stared at him. A cold sensation crept down her spine. The vague feeling she'd had for days suddenly grew clearer than ever. "Who are they?" she asked, this time softer, but heavier, as if afraid of the answer. He didn't reply immediately. He exhaled softly, as if something could no longer be delayed. Then said slowly, "They came earlier than expected." Earlier than expected. Her mind cracked open. What did that mean? He knew they would come. This wasn't random. There really was something she didn't know. Before she could ask, the door opened. A man stepped in. Around 40, sharp eyes, serious face. His presence spoke for itself. Someone used to giving orders, handling power, making decisions. The moment he saw the man in the wheelchair, he stopped. Not in surprise, but like someone who had finally found what he was looking for. Then, before her stunned eyes, he bowed. Deeply, clearly. "Sir." Her world stopped. All sound disappeared. No wind, no engines, nothing. Just that word echoing in her mind. "Sir." "Sir," she repeated, her lips dry, her voice barely her own. The men behind him bowed as well, not out of politeness, not formality, but true respect, fear, reverence. She turned slowly to the man beside her, the man she thought was a beggar, the man everyone mocked, the man just called "Sir." He was still sitting there, same face, same body, same old wheelchair. But somehow, he wasn't the same man anymore. In a single moment, everything had changed. His eyes, his presence, no longer quiet and withdrawn, but sharp, cold, controlled, powerful, the kind of power that doesn't need to be shown, but once revealed, cannot be mistaken. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice colder now, firm, not a question, a demand. "We've been looking for you for 3 months," the man replied immediately. 3 months. Her body stiffened. Who would be searched for like this? "The company is in chaos. The shareholders are pressuring us. The media is starting to suspect. We need you to come back." Each word struck her like a hammer. Company, shareholders, media, words from a world she had never known. A world of money, power, influence. She turned to him, her throat tightened. "Who are you?" This time it wasn't doubt. It was a cry. Silence. Heavy. Then he looked at her, directly, for the first time, without hiding. "I think it's time you know." He reached out. A man stepped forward respectfully, placing a phone in his hand. That gesture alone told her this was real. The screen lit up. A news article. A man in a suit. On a stage. Lights shining. A crowd watching. The headline, "The youngest billionaire in the region, founder of a leading corporation, has suddenly disappeared." She stared, then looked at him, then back. Her body froze. Her heart stopped. Because the man in the photo was him. Exactly. She stumbled back. "No, that's impossible. You are..." She couldn't finish. Beggar husband or billionaire? "Yes," he said calmly. "I'm not a beggar. I'm the one they've been looking for." Her entire world collapsed. Everything she thought she knew shattered. Then, what is all this? Her voice broke. "This marriage... what is it?" Silence. Then a choice to see. He paused. Who would still see me when I had nothing? She froze. And I saw. You didn't leave. You didn't despise me. You didn't betray me. Tears fell silently. For the first time in her life, the man beside her was not weak, not broken, but powerful enough to change everything. Outside, the cars waited. The men stood still, waiting. And she stood between two worlds, and finally understood that humiliating wedding was not the end. It was the beginning of a world she had never imagined, of money, power, secrets. The man they called a beggar was the one everyone bowed to. And she, the girl once sold like an object, had become the first person to see who he truly was. From that moment on, her life had changed forever. And this secret was only the beginning. The news spread so fast that no one had time to react. No announcements were needed. No confirmation required. Within just a few short days, the entire small village knew everything. The beggar, the man they had mocked at the wedding, the one they had pointed at, laughed at, treated like entertainment, was a billionaire. Not just rich, not ordinary wealth, but the head of a major corporation, a man whose name had appeared in the media, a man even powerful people feared. That truth was like a slap, hard, painful, and completely unexpected. Those who once laughed fell silent. No one dared mention that day again. Those who once looked down on him avoided each other's eyes. No one wanted to be reminded, no one wanted to remember what they had said. That small village suddenly felt different, not because it changed, but because everyone was trying to forget. But there were two people who couldn't forget. Inside the old house where she once lived, the air was suffocating. Her adoptive parents, the two who once held power, were now trembling. "Who What did I say back then? The mother stammered, her voice shaking uncontrollably. No, that can't be right. It must be a mistake. The father tried to reassure, but his voice lacked its former certainty, its former authority, because deep down, they knew, better than anyone. They had made the biggest mistake of their lives, not because they sold her, but because they sold the wrong person. No one said it out loud, but it was written clearly in their eyes, an undeniable truth. "We have to go see her," the mother said urgently, as if afraid that if they delayed even a little, all chances would disappear. Yes, we have to apologize." Tears began to fall. "No." The father slammed his hand on the table. A sharp sound echoed. "Not apologize, ask for help." His eyes flickered, not with regret, not with shame, but with calculation. Familiar. She used to live here. She can't turn her back on us. He smiled, a twisted smile, a mix of greed and illusion. They didn't understand that this time everything had changed. They no longer had control. The next day, they stood in front of a mansion. Not the old house, not anything familiar, but a completely different world. Tall gates, cold iron fences, security guards standing on both sides, straight-backed, sharp-eyed. The black car they once stared at in curiosity now became something they feared. "We want to see the girl," the mother spoke, her voice trembling, much smaller than before. The guard didn't answer, just looked at them. That single look was enough for them to understand they were no longer in a position to command anything. After a moment, the gate slowly opened. They were led inside, each step heavy, slow, not from exhaustion, but from fear. For the first time in their lives, they were entering a place they couldn't control. And then they saw her. She stood there, no longer the thin girl who always lowered her head, no longer the girl who was ordered around, but a woman. Her back straight, her eyes calm, no trembling, no avoidance, no fear. They froze, as if they didn't recognize her. "See, child," the mother spoke weakly. "Are you living well?" She didn't answer immediately. She just looked at them. A gaze, without anger, without sadness, just empty of emotion. "What do you want?" she asked. No mother, no father, just a question. The distance between them was clear, unbridgeable. The father stepped forward. "We're family." The moment those words left his mouth, the air froze. She laughed. A small laugh, cold. "Family," she repeated. "Family sells each other for money." The father froze, speechless. No, it's not like that. We just had no other choice. No other choice." She stepped forward. "Or you didn't want to find another silence." No one answered, because she was right. "Why are you here?" Her voice changed, sharper. The mother suddenly dropped to her knees. "Please, help us. We owe money. They're going to take the house. Please, just a little." Tears fell, but this time, no one believed them anymore. She looked down. The woman who once shouted, who once commanded, now kneeling, begging. Silence stretched. Then another voice spoke from behind. How much he appeared, still in the wheelchair. But now, no one dared look at him the same way. The father quickly looked up. Just a small amount. We'll pay it back." He didn't look at him, only asked, "How much do you owe?" A number was spoken, not small, but to him, insignificant. He nodded slightly. The father's eyes lit up. "Thank you. Thank you, sir. No." One word. Cut everything off. Silence filled the room. "That's the price," he said. "The price for selling her." They froze. "We don't understand." He looked straight at them. "You took money when you sold her to me, didn't you?" No one answered. Then, "That was a transaction. And it's over." The air turned cold. "And now," his voice dropped, "you have nothing left to sell." The mother broke down crying, "Please, have mercy. We were wrong. We didn't know." Didn't know. This time she spoke. Didn't know or didn't care. No answer. Only tears. She turned away. "Take them out." Her voice was firm. No hesitation. The guards stepped forward. The father panicked. "Wait. You can't do this. We're family." She stopped. Didn't turn back. Just said, "Family doesn't sell each other." The door closed. A sharp click echoed, like an ending. Outside, they collapsed. For the first time in their lives, they understood what it felt like to be abandoned just like they had done to her. Inside, she stood still. No tears, no trembling, just a breath. Light. As if she had finally let go of a burden she had carried her entire life. The man looked at her. "Are you okay?" She nodded slightly for the first time. She whispered, "I feel like I have a choice." He said nothing, just looked at her. This time, not testing her, but acknowledging her. And from that moment, she was no longer the girl who was sold, but a woman who chose her own destiny. The mansion fell completely silent after the door closed. That sharp click seemed to cut off everything behind it. No more sobbing, no more desperate pleas, no more frantic footsteps in the hallway. Only silence. And within that silence, two people stood facing each other. She stood by the window. The afternoon light filtered through the glass, gently resting on her face. Not harsh, not blinding, just enough to illuminate every feature. For the first time, her face was no longer hidden in shadows. No more avoiding eyes, no more shrinking posture, but a clear presence. A person standing tall, a person no longer hiding. Yet beneath that calm exterior, something else stirred within her, quiet, subtle, but strong enough to keep her from truly standing still. Not pain like before, not the feeling of being hurt, not fear, not the dread of being scolded, forced, or abandoned, but something unfamiliar, a kind of emptiness, a quiet confusion, as if she had just stepped out of a dark room, but hadn't yet adjusted to the light. "I used to think," she spoke, her voice soft, as if raising it even slightly would break everything inside her, "that one day if I escaped all of this," she paused, took a breath, "I would be happy." There was no blame in her voice, no complaint, just truth, something she had believed for years. She turned, looked at him, her eyes no longer lowered, no longer avoiding, but now she shook her head slightly. "I don't even know where I stand. Not physically, not a place, but her life." She didn't know if she was starting over or standing in the middle of something much bigger. Didn't know whether to move forward or stop. He remained silent, didn't interrupt. didn't explain, didn't offer advice, because he understood. This wasn't something that needed an immediate answer. It was something she had to face herself. This marriage, she continued, her voice steady now, was a transaction from the beginning. I didn't choose it. And you didn't tell me the truth? Her gaze was direct, not accusing, but not avoiding. So now, she paused. What are we? A silence stretched between them. This time, not heavy like before, but still deep. No one rushed to speak. No one rushed to break it. Then, he looked at her, without hesitation. What do you want it to be? That question, soft, yet it struck something deep inside her. She froze. Because, for the first time in her life, someone had asked her that, what she wanted, not commanded, not forced, not decided for her, but given back to her. She looked down, her hands clenched, fingers trembling slightly. Then, she slowly relaxed them. I don't want to live a life that's already been decided. Her voice slowed, but each word was clear. Not by my adoptive parents, not by circumstances, and not by you. She lifted her head, her eyes steadier now. He nodded. No resistance, no irritation, just acceptance. So what do you want? He asked again. This time, she didn't hesitate. I want to choose, to stay or to leave, to love or not to love. Another silence followed, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was open, a space for choice. He took a breath, as if letting something go himself, then said, If you leave, I won't stop you. If you stay, I won't force you. His voice was low, slow, no longer controlling, but sincere. Because for the first time, he said quietly, I don't want to win. He paused. I just want you to choose me. Her heart trembled. A strange warmth spread through her. Not obligation, not debt, not pressure, but respect. She walked toward him, slowly, step by step, then stopped, looking down at him, the man the world bowed to, the man who could change everything with a decision, yet in front of her, was willing to let it all go, just to give her a choice. Do you know, she said softly, my whole life, no one ever asked me what I wanted. And I thought I didn't have that right. A tear fell, but this time, not from pain, but from relief, as if something invisible had finally been released. But now, she smiled. A small, genuine smile. I do. She slowly sat down, facing him, the distance between them no longer far. And I choose. A second passed, then another, to stay. The air stilled, not from shock, but because that moment was real, but not because you're a billionaire, not because of this house, not because I owe you. She looked straight into his eyes. I stay because for the first time, someone sees me as a person, not a burden, not an object, not a responsibility, just me. He said nothing, but his eyes changed. No longer cold, no longer guarded, no longer controlled, only emotion. Real, for the first time. Outside, sunlight stretched across the garden. The wind moved gently through the leaves, no trace of past storms, no heavy rain, only peace and somewhere far away. In that small village, those who once laughed were learning to stay silent. And she was no longer the girl who had been sold, no longer the abandoned child, no longer the one who bowed her head, but a woman who rewrote her life, not with money, not with luck, but with choice. And perhaps that is the most valuable thing of all. Not who loves you when you have everything, but who stays when you have nothing. Final message. You may have been abandoned. You may have been looked down on. You may have been treated like an object. But there is one thing. No one can take away from you the right to choose how you live your life.